Chapter 6, and today our discussion of contracts is going to focus on offer and acceptance. What we're going to talk about is the requirements to establish a valid contract, the difference between an offer and merely an invitation to make an offer. We're going to talk about the duration of an offer, when an offer expires, in other words. We'll talk about the difference between a counteroffer or merely inquiring about different terms. And then we'll talk about ways to accept an offer and specifically the mailbox rule, which is particularly important in the contract world. We create a valid contract between the parties when we have an offer, and that can be either express or implied. So an express offer would be, I offer to sell you my Corvette for $500. That is an express offer. We can have an implied offer where we don't specifically state the terms, and we can accept an offer either expressly or in implied fashion. So we can, in response to my offer, say, for example, I agree to pay you $500 for your Corvette, and that would be an express acceptance of an offer. Or I can hand you $500 after you make that offer, hold out my hand, you put the keys in it, I take the keys and I drive away, and I have, by implication, accepted your offer. Now, who are the parties to the offer? The party that's making the offer is the offeror, and the party that's accepting the offer is the offeree. To have a valid offer, the offer must be definite. We must have clear terms. We can't equivocate. It can't be wishy-washy. It's got to be clear. The offer must appear to be seriously intended. For example, my teenage son will often bet his friends $1 million that they will or won't do something or accomplish something. Obviously, he doesn't have $1 million to bet, and that's what I try to explain to his friends when they come to me to collect on those debts. The offer also must be communicated to the offeree. So it's not enough that I have decided to offer something, but I must actually communicate that in some fashion. Now, we don't want to confuse the difference between an offer and merely an invitation to make an offer, and sometimes that can happen. An offer, again, has very clear, definite terms, whereas an invitation is merely an opportunity to encourage people to make offers. The example would be a window display in the mall says t-shirts 50% off today. That is an invitation for someone to come in and make an offer. That isn't merely an offer. The advertisement itself does not constitute an offer, just an invitation for the public to come in and make offers. And so I have a not terribly sophisticated video reenactment of an invitation to make an offer. So in the world of contract law, we have to make sure that we can distinguish between a legitimate offer versus an offer to make an offer, which is essentially an invitation. Now, here I stand in front of something which is hopefully familiar to all of you. It is the vending machine that we have here on campus. And what we see from that vending machine is it wants us to enjoy a refreshing drink, and that we have to press the selection to make to view the price. But we can see here that the price is posted on each of these items. So what I'm going to basically do is I am now going to make an offer based upon this invitation. And I am making an offer. I have made an offer. Now it is accepting my offer, and it is delivering my product. So that's an example where the acceptance was implied because there was a performance of the terms of the contract on the part of the vending machine. I put my money in and it then responded, and there was no written contract, no express terms. Everything was basically implied. So let's talk about the duration of the offer. The offeror may revoke an offer at any time before it's accepted. So if I say to you, I will sell you my Corvette for $500, and then I think about it a little bit and maybe decide that I don't really want to sell my Corvette. And so I say to you, you know what, never mind, forget it, never mind. And as long as I do that before you've accepted the offer, I'm free to revoke that offer. However, if you have accepted my offer and then I change my mind, it's too late for me, I'm bound by that. Now let's talk about, we're going to step aside of the typical contract situation here and talk about an option. So what is an option? Let's say I say to you, this is going to be an offer of a particular duration. So I will sell you my car for $500 and you have until Friday to make a decision, and after that there will be no offer. So you now say to me, boy, that's not a lot of time to make an offer. I'd really like more time to think about that. Or maybe you want to go home and ask your significant other about this deal. So you say, boy, could I have some more time? Could I have another week? Now, I'm thinking, I don't want to hold this offer open for another week and maybe lose the opportunity to sell it to somebody else if you decide in a week that you really aren't interested. So instead, I could say to you, sure, I'll extend the option for you to accept my offer for another week, but you're going to have to pay me for that option. And if you decide you're not going to accept my offer at the end of the option period, it's not as though you get your money back. So you say, all right, that's reasonable. And for me, it's got to be enough money so that if I let another sale go by because I was waiting for you to decide what you're going to do, at least I'm not completely out and I got some money for the benefit of letting another potential sale slip through my fingers while you're trying to decide what you want to do. So the important thing to know is that I can't revoke that option anytime I want. Once I've extended that option and we've agreed on the terms of that option, I can't go, yeah, never mind. I'm stuck with that until the option period has expired. If there's a revocation, jumping back to the offer acceptance, leaving the option issue aside, if I decide to revoke an offer, I must communicate that to the person I've offered it to before they've accepted. Again, once an offer's been accepted, the parties are now obligated to perform, or you end up in a breach of contract situation. So, it's really important to pay attention to that. If you think that you're going to want to revoke your offer, you better to do it sooner rather than later, because if you run the risk that somebody will accept it and then you'll be stuck with it. We can also have an offer terminate based on a specified time in the deal. Again, the example of I agree to sell you my car, but you need to tell me by Friday is a specified time in the offer. If there isn't a specified time in the offer, sometimes we have to look to the courts. The courts will really look at the nature of the offer to determine what's reasonable. It certainly offers aren't open for an indefinite period of time, to come back to somebody 5 years later for a sale of a car, for example. That would not be a reasonable expectation of an offer period. But if it's a close call, certainly the courts may have to make that decision. Other things that can terminate an offer are the death or insanity of the offeror. Because remember, you have to have capacity in order to enter into a contract. And certainly death would rob someone of the capacity to do anything. And insanity, one cannot legally bind a contract. Another way an offer terminates is if we reject the offer. So I say, I'll sell you my car, and you say, for $500, and you say, forget that, I'm not buying that. Well, now the offer's over. If you decide a few minutes later that you really thought about it and you acted hastily, I'm under no obligation to revive that offer. That offer is done once you've rejected it. By the same token, if performance of the contract becomes illegal, the offer is terminated. So if we have a deal that you're going to construct a casino for me and operate that casino, and we're going to be partners in this casino operation, and then they make gambling in that area not legal, and so then there's that would be something that would terminate the contract. Acceptance of that offer. Acceptance means, yes, I agree. I'm willing to enter into this contract with you on these terms. And how do we accept? We can, again, expressly accept. I accept your contract to do X. It can be oral, it can be written, it can be an action which shows acceptance, and in some instances, silence can be acceptance. It's also important to consider who can accept an offer. If I offer to sell my car to you and it's overheard by somebody else who happens to be eavesdropping on our conversation, they don't get to come in and accept that offer because that offer is strictly between you and I. It's not like an invitation where I'm advertising a for sale sign and I'm inviting people to come in and make me offers. This is specifically an offer between you and I, and it can only be accepted by you. But again, sometimes silence can be acceptance of an offer. But this is a rare instance. Part of the criteria for accepting an offer based on silence is if the person who has accepted an offer has a reasonable opportunity to reject the offer, knowing that there's going to be compensation that's expected. And I am going to jump over to another video example. So in this video, we will see a couple of examples where silence may result in the acceptance of an offer. Now here we have two enterprising young chaps out washing windows. Now, these folks are not doing this for their health. There's an expectation of money. Now notice the car closest to us. These people don't seem to be doing anything to say stop, don't do that. And this is a really common thing in cities. Won't see much of that up here. And now the job's done and there's payment. So their silence clearly constituted acceptance of the contract. Now let's look at the car ahead. Our Person two, enterprise. Okay, now there's the his friend there's trying to get payment, trying to get the window rolled down, and nothing's happening. So now he says to his friend, hey, they're going to stiff us, and there's the universal sign for have a nice day. So we could kind of see what was going on in the car closest to us. And it was apparent, at least to me, that there was no effort made to shoo these people away, and that there was a basic understanding that a service was going to be performed or was being performed, and there was going to be an expectation of payment. And that seemed to be an implied contract or an implied acceptance of that contract by doing nothing. We don't really know what was going on in the first car. They may have been shooing them away, or it may have been someone who just had no idea that this is a real common occurrence and that you need to shoo them away and let them know you're not going to pay them because there's an expectation. And so in this example, the offeree, the people in the vehicle, by doing nothing, gave the offeror reason to know that their silence may be an acceptance of that contract. Now, generally, we look at the context of the relationship between the parties before we make a determination about whether silence alone is sufficient to constitute acceptance. And so the previous dealings, the context of their relationship would help us determine whether or not it was reasonable. Now, these folks may be, these two young men may be out of luck if they find themselves in a courtroom situation, because it is unlikely that a judge would say, well, you had no prior relationship with these people, so you had no basis to believe that their silence constituted acceptance of the contract. On the other hand, if I were those guys, I might say, look, this is commonplace. This happens all the time. This is part of our culture. And these people should have known that this is how we behave in these situations, and it was their obligation to tell us, no, go away. I think that's a tough argument, but that may be the argument they make nonetheless. So what happens when we decide that we're going to make a counteroffer? Again, I offer you my car for $500, and you have to tell me you have to agree to take the car by Friday. Now, you might say to me, you know what, that car's not worth $500. I'll give you $300 for it. That's it. That's what's known as a counteroffer. And the counteroffer will result in a termination of that original offer. And now it's up to me to decide whether or not I want to accept your counteroffer. But if I say, forget you, you've now insulted me. My car's worth way more than $350, and you now can't come back and say, wait, never mind. Okay, I'll take the $500. Too late. You ran the risk by counteroffering that you were going to terminate that offer, and that was the risk you took. Now let's compare that to merely inquiring about changing the terms and how that looks different from a counteroffer. You tell me, okay, and you got to agree to take the car by Friday because I'm moving. I say to you, boy, I don't know that I can get over there Friday. If I were able to take the car on Saturday, would that be acceptable? That would be an example of an inquiry. That would not terminate the original offer. However, if I could, while you're making inquiry, certainly decide to revoke that offer and make it not available for you to accept. But merely making that inquiry, it doesn't have the same weight as a counter offer, and the original offer is still alive and available to be accepted unless I decide to revoke it before you have a chance to do that. So how can we accept an offer? In many instances, it will depend on the context of the relationship or what's printed in the contract. Hopefully most contracts are in writing, and it will specifically say what constitutes acceptance. But if there's nothing specified, then basically any manner of communication could be acceptable. There is a concept, however, that's incredibly important in the world of contracts, which is known as the Mailbox Rule. And if the acceptance is sent by mail, it is effective the minute it gets dropped into one of these blue bins that we regularly see on street corners. And so then it is deemed accepted at that point. So let's imagine the example where I have made you an offer. You have decided to accept my offer in writing because I haven't put anything down in terms of what the terms of acceptance are. You say, I agree to buy your car for $500. You then take that to the post office, you put it in the mail. It takes a day or two to get to me. And in the meantime, I've had a change of heart. I've decided not to sell my car to you. Well, the fact that you deposited that acceptance in that blue mailbox, it is deemed accepted at that moment, and it is too late for me to revoke that offer. And we are both now bound to that offer. So again, that's something that we have to make sure of. And so specifying the terms of acceptance is really important if there's a danger of something like that happening. And let's say now, for example, I don't receive it. It is presumed that it's received, but that isn't an ironclad presumption. If it's received by, if it's sent by certified mail, and I don't agree to accept the certified, and I send it back refused, I think if I refuse it, a court's going to probably side with the offeree and say that was a valid acceptance. If, however, you get my address wrong and it comes back, I think a court's going to have a tough time siding with you if you didn't address it properly. Or, what if something happens? What if it's lost in the mail and I never receive it? And in the meantime, I think you just haven't responded, so I decide to sell it to somebody else. Courts will certainly have to look at each of our actions, and the burden is going to be on me to show that the method of acceptance wasn't adequate and that I didn't receive it. If I truly, truly didn't receive it, this is where equity may come into play. And a court may very well say, well, and especially if the person who made the offer, there was no follow-up. If it was just a letter in the mail and that was it, and there was some period of time that the offer was supposed to be accepted by, and I didn't receive anything, and there was no follow-up, I think a court may step in and say, well, what was reasonable under the circumstances? As a belt and suspenders approach to acceptance, most attorneys will send something not only by certified mail, but also by regular first-class mail. So even if the certified is rejected, it's presumed that the regular first class was accepted. And because even if the certified isn't refused, if it just sits there for a number of days, the post office will send it back if somebody doesn't come to sign for it. So sending it by both ways gives an added layer of assurance that the mailbox rule has been complied with. And what I also do in addition to that is once both the certified and the first class letters are addressed and the certified cards are on them, I will photocopy them after I've run them through the postage meter with the postage on them to show how it was addressed, the date on the postmark, and all of those things. And I have had to produce those as exhibits before as added proof. In addition to the fact that the person that I sent to the post office with it has occasionally had to sign affidavits swearing to the fact that they deposited it into the post office at a particular location on a particular day. When somebody's arguing, I never got it, I shouldn't be held to that. So While the mailbox rule provides us with a presumption, we shouldn't just rely blindly on it, and also take additional steps would be the prudent thing to do to ensure that our acceptance is properly communicated. And that concludes our chapter on offer and acceptance.